church.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Questions You Never Thought You Could Ask in Church. This is the podcast where we invite you, the listener, to text your questions in. Questions about God, questions about Jesus, questions about Christianity, questions about the Bible, questions about spirituality, questions about how it might compare or contrast to other belief systems in this world. The questions you have that you might not know where to ask, or you might be afraid to ask, or might be embarrassed to ask, particularly in a church setting. We believe church is a place where you should be able to ask questions. Ask the weird ones, the bizarre ones, the far out ones, the heretical ones, the ones that are unpopular, the ones that are uncomfortable, the ones that you're confused by, the ones that are complex, the ones that are simple, and even the ones that are silly. You can ask them here at 815-314-0363. Just text it again to 815-314-0363. If you're joining us on Facebook, you can post those questions in the chat comments. Maybe you're joining us through 216 The Net or through Fellowship of Faith. Either way, we will get that feed today. My name is David Gadini, here in the studio today with Andrew Metcalf, Steve Wells, and producing is the illustrious Kent Jones in Studio 216 here. Kent, how's it going today?
Happy, healthy, and terrific. Thank you.
And a big head.
Yeah, large crane.
We just figured out, so neither one of us have hair.
Yeah.
And so
Really, none of us in the studio have hair. I think when you come down to it.
Look at that.
Oh,
Whoa,
Andrew, look out.
So you're
All
the
right.
outcast.
I'm the outcast,
One of
but
these things doesn't
I'm the
look
one
like
in
the
denial.
But anyway, so I tried. Kent's got this. Well, I don't know, like a
Kinda
coat rack and whatnot. But he hangs his hat there. So I tried it on, and I'm swimming in it.
Yeah,
I
that
have
was
a little
large.
tiny head.
Yeah. Kent hit it. You really did look like a 12-year-old kid, like trying to be a rapper. Actually,
baseball
the
The
totally.
Benjamin Buttons guy.
No, I was thinking Will Smith.
Will Smith.
And if you don't watch out, Kent,
Yeah.
I'm coming for you.
That's
Yeah. Anyway, hey, you know what would be kind of fun is that if, like, you just listed a whole barrage of like the types of questions you said, silly and blah 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 blah. But if you when you send your questions, if you could categorize them for us,
Yeah, right.
so we know, like, hey, well, this is a silly one. But see, because silly to us, it may be like serious to them, and
It could be, or vice versa.
I don't want to I don't want to offend anyone.
So let us know the tone.
The tone of your question.
Because
Yeah.
we care.
Text an emoji with your question
That would be good.
for the intent, and then we'll have to try and interpret the emoji too.
What if it was just emojis, no questions? You have to try to figure out what the
Yeah,
question
right,
is
right.
from the emojis.
Kind of like some semaphore thing or Morse code thing going
Yeah.
on, right? Yeah.
Dave has a lucky cross behind him today because horseshoes are lucky, and the cross, well, I guess it's a lucky cross, right?
Yeah, look at that.
It's always interesting
cross,
to
yeah.
see what's in this studio.
Yeah.
So
Had
if you're
a,
not with us on Facebook Live and you can't see inside the studio, I love to give like descriptions of things that are happening around here.
Had a listener that made that and sent it in.
It's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
That's very cool. Do they want to make one for my house?
They may.
I take one.
Did they come off of a real horse?
That I don't know.
These are well used horseshoes.
I don't know if those are used.
Let's answer some questions.
I mean, you asked one right
I
there.
did.
So,
Did they cut? See, this would
You
be
can ask that.
categorized
and-
as a silly.
Would that be
question.
silly? Would that be
Yeah,
with
I
like a
think so.
wink in the emoji there,
A wink.
or is it a?
With maybe a little kiss of a heart
Yeah, there you go.
That's it.
to you, Ken.
I just add
I
that
know.
to any text I get from
Yeah,
anyone.
wink, wink, kiss,
I
kiss.
take it in that context. They probably meant to say
Right.
to send a kissing emoji.
This
Yeah.
is how I would have done it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what do we got here today, Andrew? It looks like the inbox is pretty full.
Yeah, I think we're gonna start off with this first one. We were chatting a little bit about it right before we started. Can trust really be proven, or does it ultimately come down to taking someone's word for it?
I kind of like this question because Christianity is such a faith-based religion. Life is such a faith-based enterprise, right?
Yeah.
It's not just Christianity. But I think that when people talk about the importance of faith in Christianity, it often gets misinterpreted because it comes across as, dare I say, a blind faith, or just like conjuring up belief in your soul against all logic and odds. And you just have to believe, almost like these Christmas movies, these kids' Christmas movies that you see that come out like every year, where it's
Wait, no spoilers.
just believe.
No,
Yeah.
no,
You
no
know?
spoilers. We
And
might
if you
have
look-
children watching.
We're talking about Christmas, and Chris is listening right now. She's very excited.
Chris is in
Christmas
retirement right
fanatic.
now,
She is in
filled with
retirement
joyful
and-
emojis.
And
Yeah.
planning all of our Christmas Eve services. So
Yeah.
good luck.
You know, I want to recharacterize this question. I don't like the idea of trust being proven, because I think proof and proven has such different connotations for different people. I think some people mistakenly talk about proof as meaning there can be no room for doubt whatsoever. It is ironclad in every way, and every objection has been answered and overturned. And that's just not true to life in any aspect whatsoever. I would argue that at some point, everything in life comes down to some level of belief, trusting that it will hold up. You know, I mean, I get in my car and I just kind of instinctually trust that it's not going to blow up, even though I'm on 20 gallons of gas, which
Although
is a
sometimes
bomb.
I have that thought.
Once in a while.
Once I turn this key,
Right.
what if it just
And
blows
especially
up?
when your car starts like leaking gas a
Do you
little bit, or
trust or do you
smell
hope?
it. I think hope goes into trust. I mean, it shows itself to be faithful, and you reasonably think that it's going to work. Yeah, I would say I trust it.
I would have to say that I don't trust anything in this world.
Now, there are some cars that have hoped. There are some cars that truly hope. You know, I've had hope cars and I've had trust cars.
Yes.
Like, you hope it's gonna make it there.
Yeah, right. Right. A lot of prayers in some of those cars. Okay, so flesh it out, Steve. You say you don't really trust anything in this world, which I don't think you mean you completely distrust everything in this world. But where are you going?
No, I think that because it is a fallen world, I don't think there's anything or any person on this earth that you can fully trust, that you can put your complete trust in.
But I would say
they're
that you're
never going to let you down.
But you're adding the word fully in there. You're qualifying it. So, I mean,
well,
and I'm
can
glad
you-
you are, because
you-
I think this is what happens when people talk about trust. Some are, I think, just intuitively supplying words like fully, completely, absolutely, while others might not extend it that far, right? So, like, I would say I trust you, even though you're a fallen human being. But then you can start going, well, trust you to do what? Trust you in what circumstances, right? And that's true for
In every way, you can trust me.
in every way. We can
I-
trust Steve, right?
I don't think so.
No, of course not. Of course not, right?
Yeah.
So how does faith or trust get built?
Hmm.
Well, I think we all kind of know this. I mean, it comes through a variety of sources. If something shows itself trustworthy, you trust it more. If someone is vouching or advocating for something and you trust that person, you tend to extend a little bit more trust. At some point, we all take a risk on someone or something. And so, can trust be proven? Well, let me put it this way. Can trust have evidence behind it? Can there be a basis for trusting something? Absolutely. 100%. If you're looking for 100% ironclad proof before you trust anyone or anything, you will trust nothing, and life is just rendered unfunctional. Does it just come down to taking someone's word for it? This is a false dichotomy being set up. There is a whole spectrum between learning to trust something or finding proof, trust, and taking someone's word for it. Sometimes we take people's words for it, right? And then you choose to do so on the level of trustworthiness of that person, I hope, or the respect that you put in that person. You can be conned, absolutely. But the faith that Christ is calling us to is not a fairy tale faith. And I think that's fundamentally what I'm suspecting this is coming from. It's not just a believe for belief's sake because I like the idea. God repeatedly calls himself faithful, and he repeatedly invites people to trust him on the basis of his faithfulness, to almost let him prove it, if you will. And the faithfulness of God does not come down to tests that we set up for God that he then has to answer, though he does do that once in a while. Far more, he says, this is what I'm about. This is what I'm going to do. See if it holds true. And there's a track record there that he builds. So he invites us to trust him in the areas where things have not come to pass yet. And yet he said they will. That's, I think, fundamentally the best way I can answer this question without a little more context
Are you
here.
happy with that answer, Andrew?
Can you live tonight with that, Andrew?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Can
I
you sleep?
as you
All
were
right.
talking about that, I thought about. I feel like everyone's parent has probably said this to them at some point when they were growing up. Of I have to re-earn your trust or something. When you mess up, you make a mistake, you break the rules, whatever. It's like, yeah, I still love you, but you've lost some of my trust.
So
And it's like you're gonna have to earn that back through following the rules or whatever. Like that seems to be a part. It's not an absolute black or white. Like I trust you or I don't. Like there's levels to that, I would say.
So that tells me a lot about your childhood.
Yeah.
And I think the difference between my parents and your parents is my parents probably never said,
We trust you
will
at
I
all.
ever earn their trust?
So there was no hope there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
We need a counselor here on 21/6 the Net, Kent. I got to tell you, we got to get the couch in here because
How do we
everyone
get
who does
live
a show, we've got
sessions?
it. Yeah, right. Live sessions. Absolutely.
I think that would be good. I have a quote written down here. I don't remember where I found it, but I added it into our list. It said it's not doubt that's toxic to faith, it's silence that's toxic to faith. And I think that applies kind of with that trust in the Bible and religion, in your pastor, in your church, and whoever it is. Like trust doesn't mean an absence of doubt or questioning or any of those things. It's like I think those two things can work in tandem, because through wrestling in your doubts or in your questions, that's where that trust can then grow and become stronger. But if you just choose to ignore those and not think about them, I think there's only so far that level of trust can go then. Does that make sense?
I kind of like to compare trust to courage, because I read a quote once too, that courage is not the absence of fear, but doing the job despite it.
Yeah.
Faith is not the absence of doubt, but clinging on despite it. Right?
Yeah.
In fact, you could even argue that that courage can't exist without fear. Is it brave if you're not afraid?
Yeah.
Now, it could be from another person's vantage point, but a true act of courage is when you're facing your fear and yet moving forward nonetheless. I think faith is much the same way. And sadly, I think for too many people, they think that because they have seeds of doubt that they, like you said, they're silent, or they run from God, or they hide from God, or they think it consigns them to being outside the kingdom of God. Because
if I ask this, people think that I don't trust God.
Or even because I think this,
Yeah.
Therefore God is displeased because God knows all things and God has cast me out and I have lost faith. Yeah, which is the farthest from the truth.
Yeah.
So can I give you some lyrics, because that's where my mind goes.
You got lyrics? All
I
right.
do,
All right.
because if like just listening to this is one thing, but actually putting another piece of your sensory, multi-sensory into this, listen to Doubting Doubts by Citizens. And the first verse, I keep searching for the answers to my doubts. It's like I'm caught between belief and wanting out. Love that line.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, great line.
But there's a promise that my soul just cannot shake, that I am loved despite the struggles of my faith. So good.
Mm-hmm.
So Doubting Doubts by Citizens, go listen to it.
Okay. We singing that this Sunday?
No.
But it's a good song.
Have we ever sung it?
No.
Well, yes,
You've
not
sung
at FOF.
Yeah, I was going to even ask,
yeah.
would it even be singable congregationally?
Uh,
Some songs aren't, you know?
So,
Tough.
okay.
Yeah.
We'll debate that another time.
Okay.
Ever heard the song by Bare Naked Ladies? That is Chicken to China, the Chinese chicken.
Yeah.
Keep going. What is it?
I couldn't
You have
even,
a
I know the
drumstick and
song,
your
but I
brain
can't.
starts
Yeah.
sticking, blah, 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 right? So another pastor friend of mine, same conversation. Well, it's not singable. Well, how many times do you have to hear it before it's singable?
Mm-hmm.
Pop radio, right? I mean, that's all they do is they force it on you every hour because they want you to be able to sing it and understand it and listen to it. And it's like an earworm. So to me, I think any song is singable.
Okay.
Watching
fair enough.
X-Files with the lights on.
Thank you. See, you know it. Anyway,
Wait, what? What does X-Files have to do with this?
part of the song.
Oh, okay. Clearly, I don't know
Kids.
enough about that song.
Kids nowadays.
We'll text your questions to 815-314-0363. What do we got?
Yeah. Should Christians be pro-life but against same-sex adoptions? Why or why not?
Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks for asking. Every Christian should be pro-life. And for a moment, I am going to step away from modern day political movements and parties and just talk about what the term means. God is the source of life. God is pro or for life. Life emanates from God. Life is valuable to God. God sees and even describes an antithesis between death and life as death being an enemy, and life being what's found in him. So God is always advocating for life. And I think that just needs to be a philosophical starting point, regardless of how it translates into various movements. But that's applicable in every conceivable way, so that all life is, of course, valuable to God. And that includes sick life, that includes old life, that includes damaged life, that includes burdened life, that includes unborn life, that includes life. God is a life advocate, and hence why so many Christians are involved with pro-life movements, as they existed certainly in the States today, and around the world as well. And by the way, not a new phenomenon. They were pro-life back in the first, second, third centuries AD of Rome, when abortion was an issue as well, and more likely was abandonment, or more frequent was abandonment. And what Christians would do is take these unwanted children that were left out in the garbage heap or out in the road or wherever it happened to be, and bring them into their homes and raise them as their own. Can't really do that today in the States. We got birth certificates and laws and other things that kind of regulate this, and for good reason, which makes adoption all the more important. So the question here asks is, should they be pro-life? We answered that, but against same-sex couple adoption? No, not necessarily. I don't think necessarily there has to be a movement against same-sex couple adoption. All human beings are sinners, and anyone who is adopting someone is ultimately a sinner or corrupt in some kind of way. I think you judge the merits of the person, and what kind of parent that they're going to be, and how they're going to raise the child, and let that run it rather than certain things. I could argue similarly, should divorced people be prohibited from adopting? And I would say no, not de facto or not automatically. Is it a factor that should be looked at? Well, of course it should be. But you look at the individual in the home, because there are a lot of kids in this world who need homes. And I think if a Christian is going to be pro-life in terms of taking a stance that says life begins in the womb and we've got to help unborn children, that doesn't stop when they're born. And so how do we get engaged with that as well? And I think a lot in the pro-life movement have done that very well, certainly in the last generation, where it's become less of an anti-abortion, or let me put it this way. There certainly still is an idea that abortion is wrong in the pro-life movement, but they've layered on top of it with how to help young moms either raise their kids or families work through the adoption process and foster process and things like that. So yeah, there you go. 815-314-0363 is the text number.
One other thing I thought, kind of on top of that, or in addition to that, what about single people adopting as well? Because that's not, I think the typical argument is like, oh, you need a mother and a father in the home. And that's God's idea for a family, or vision for a family, maybe. So what about either single parents or single people who just want to raise kids? It's like, good, bad?
I'm going to step away from any what I would call policy part of the discussion, and how DCFS here in Illinois and adoption agencies have to kind of work this, and how lawmakers are kind of strategizing it. But just step back. Yes, I mean, it's kind of self-evident from a scriptural, biblical, and everything, just observational point of view, is that a mother and a father together raise a child, and that there's some kind of design of nature, and I would argue by God himself, that a mother and a father raising a child is what we would call the ideal situation. To which I would immediately chase it with, since when do you find an ideal situation in a fallen world today? My mother and father are divorced. I am very glad they got a divorce, because I think if I grew up in that home with them together, it would have been far worse than in the divorce situation. Now, I don't know that, but it's just my suspicion reflecting on. Does that mean it's the ideal? No, far from the ideal. The ideal would be if my mom and dad could figure out how to get along, right? And both face their own crap, and learned how to work through their issues together. And that's a tough thing. It just didn't play out that way. A single mom is not ideal. Talk to any single mom. It's hard. It's hard when there's two parents. It's exponentially harder if you're a solo parent or a single dad for that matter. Oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine. And yet you do it anyway against the ideal because the ideal isn't dished up. So I'm of the opinion personally that if we wait around for the ideals, nothing ever happens. I mean, there's immediate needs in life right now. And sometimes you move forward with the best with which life has to offer. And you take your place in life and you say, this is what it is. Let me honor God from this place, regardless of what, quote, ideal might be, and do the job,
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of some background on how I think about this adoption question in particular, and all its ramifications for other aspects in life, too. It'd be ideal if every pastor was a great preacher, right? It'd be ideal if he was great in like 1,000 things. Just ain't going to happen. Get on with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. I understand we won't know everything in eternity, but will we have more clarity? Will things make more sense? And then an example, like take what happened last week in Texas. Will a tragedy like that remain forever a frustrating mystery?
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
A couple weeks ago now.
And in eternity, yes, I think there will be far more clarity to many things that we don't have now. I'm going to share a Bible passage out of 1 Corinthians 13. And it says this: for now, this is 13 verse 12. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then, talking about eternity, we shall see face to face. And I think what the author Paul here is talking about in many ways is not only God, but the nature of life and our interaction in life itself. It goes beyond just knowing God more. It goes beyond understanding God's work in this world more and who we are in this world and the very nature of who we are. And so, we're definitely going to see clearer on the other side of eternity. But I don't think that should imply that we're going to be omniscient, meaning knowing all things. Only God is omniscient. And I think some people have a mistaken idea that, when we get to heaven, we'll know all the answers. Well, I don't know about that. And I'm inclined to think it's the opposite. I think we'll spend an eternity learning more and more, growing in knowledge more and more. But I don't know if we'll never get it infinitely, and I don't know if we'll ever get all of our questions answered. There's a fascinating passage in Revelation 6 where it says that those who were beheaded for the name of Christ are found under the altar in heaven. And they're crying out to God from under the altar in heaven, how long, O Lord, basically until you're going to do justice on the earth and vindicate us, is the spirit of it, which implies that they don't even know then why God has allowed certain things to happen, or maybe better put, why God is waiting to kind of get on with setting all things right and allowing some of these tragedies like we saw in Texas last week, or thousands of others that we can mention, go on and occur. And so back to the faith question, God invites us to trust him, to say, I've told you that I'm good, and I've told you that I've got best interest at heart, and I've told you that I've got a purpose and a plan and a future. Can I trust you in the faith of tragedy based on your track record, based on what you've revealed about yourself, to hang on in faith, even if it doesn't make sense right now?
I think that summarizes that pretty well. Yeah, because I don't know that I want all the answers.
I do. I want every answer possible, because that way I can start weeding out things.
Steve can sleep at night.
I can sleep at night, but at the same time, when I think about the new earth, I only want fun.
Only fun.
Yep. I want to ride four-wheelers. I want to ride giant big wheels. I want to have paintball wars. I want to go to like circuses. Even though,
I got to imagine there's some listeners who think you're describing hell right now.
Yeah. Well, that's the new earth. So if you don't like that, then just stop believing.
It's four-wheelers, paintball wars, and circuses. I got to tell you, that is like the most interesting combination.
My mind right now.
That's many people's nightmares, I think. Yeah.
And really loud music.
So we know what Steve's heaven is. And no hearing loss.
Will it be tailored to our own likings, you think? Like, will you have things, I would imagine like
your
yours,
heaven.
like
Yeah,
your
yeah, tell me
Dave's
mine,
heaven would
tell me
be,
mine.
I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's Dave is literally in like the Lord of the Rings and reading books throughout the whole movie, like, and maybe doing some jousting, and wearing
Definitely
costumes.
he's in chainmail armor for sure.
Probably on repeat is the movie RRR.
Fantastic, man.
It's the Indian version of The Greatest Showman meets The Matrix.
I mean, Ken, come on, help me out here, Ken. On that description alone, don't you have to see this movie?
Now I do.
and possibly meets Bill and Ted.
Possibly, yeah. I think you got to
There's a little
overlay
bit
that.
That is a lot of crossover.
It's horrible.
RRR.
It's horrible.
3-letter R's.
3-letter R's.
RRR was like
If-
number 8 on Netflix on Sunday or something like that. Yeah.
If you smoke marijuana, I highly recommend doing that before you watch this movie. Just saying. I didn't. Just saying if you did.
It'll make
What I
me
love-
want to go to Bristol.
Now
Wisconsin.
you led me to believe yesterday that you actually watched the whole thing.
I did.
I love this. You sit here and you hate this movie, but it was like a 3-hour and 5-minute
hours.
movie.
3
Yeah.
hours.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
now that boy.
What was your favorite part, Steve?
Is it
I'll tell
in
you the
Eng- is it in
stupidest part.
English or is it in?
It's both.
It's both.
It's in
okay.
both.
It's pre-independent India, so it's British colonized India. So you'll have it in various
Okay.
Indian
The-
languages and
Oh,
also
man.
I'm
The
intrigued.
in English.
Indians have a special dance, and they were not going to be outdone by the British, so they had the dance off.
Of course.
The dance-off was fantastic.
Now-
The dance-off made the movie.
Now there's that, and then there's a time when he gets slingshot
Mhm.
out of kind of like a circus cage almost.
A little bit.
He's holding these things of fire.
I got torches.
And-
Right.
Now here's antelope and tigers and lions, and they're
Oh my.
attacking the British. It is the dumbest
Oh, it's amazing.
movie ever.
The way I would put it, Kent, is have you ever seen The Rundown with The Rock?
Yeah.
Imagine an Indian version of The Rundown.
Okay.
No. See,
Yeah.
Tina says I have a warped view of Renaissance fair. No, Tina. My view is like literal.
You haven't even been to a Renaissance fair.
I know exactly what it is.
Oh, you got to go. There's one right here in
I don't need
Bristol,
to go.
Wisconsin.
I don't need to go.
I
I
know.
know.
You need it. Everybody needs to experience that.
I don't
Get a
think
turkey
so.
leg.
I think that would be my
You can-
definition.
You can have a dance off. We could do a dance
Yeah.
off at the Renaissance fair.
Seeing people
Would you do it?
pretend to be these something that? Why would you ever want to pretend to be that? For one, I don't get it.
Living
So,
So
before
Tina,
it.
you know what? Wear your cape and you guys wear like little dunce hats. or something?
Yeah, you nailed it on the head here,
Yeah.
Steve. I mean, yeah, you know it inside and out.
Eating
Hey, you
turkey
know, I
legs,
Eating
walking
turkey
across
legs.
like little wooden bridges that they make for you.
watching a guy land a hawk.
And then Dave's got his
I would-
little stick pony that he's trotting around on throughout the campus.
I would go to your version of a Renaissance fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Well, that's my circus.
That's a circus.
So is
yeah.
that's your heaven?
No.
No.
So only if Steve could drive a 4-wheeler.
And
You
mow
know, and-
over everybody at the Renaissance fair.
Wow.
Well, in a fun way.
in a fun way, yeah.
Figuratively.
Figuratively.
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh,
So how did we
fantastic.
get here? So does
Michelle
everyone
says
have their
that.
own?
This was
their
quite a
own
spiral.
heaven?
This is
Yeah.
quite a spiral,
We-
yeah.
We start on.
It's
heaven
heaven tailored.
personal,
It's
yeah.
heaven personal. Yeah.
Yeah. See, we had this conversation prior to the show, even saying like our minds right now are in 1,000 different directions, and I can't focus on anything. Right? I have too many pieces in the pot. Is that what you
Mhm,
say? Or
yeah.
too
Too many plates in the air.
yeah,
Irons in the
irons
fire,
in the fire,
balls in the air.
balls in the air. Yep.
What else? What other cliche can we come up here for
What
to
do you got, Ken? You
describe
got something? You're smiling.
bees in the hive?
Probably not appropriate.
Too many shows to listen to on
Oh,
21
there
the
it
net.
is.
Hey, there you
Probably
go.
it's
Little
my
shout.
mind is frazzled and still trying to reconnect itself from watching RRR.
So a good day is Waterworld and then RRR. With that-
yeah, sure.
Yeah, 12 hours of your life right there, you know?
Another movie I've never. Is that a movie? TV show?
Waterworld's an old Kevin Costner movie.
a terrible
It's basically The Road Warrior at sea.
one. Mhm.
balls in the air.
Sounds like Renfair.
Okay.
Ooh, nice rhyme, Tina.
So wait. We can't
Exactly.
let this go by because you've seen The Road Warrior, right? And I'm not talking the most recent Mad Max.
Mad Max?
Yeah, like we're talking the classic Mel Gibson ones, right?
Yeah. I love those.
Kind of cult classics from the late 70s, very early 80s. Don't watch Mad Max. Start with The Road Warrior. It's the second one, and it's kind of just it's post-apocalyptic, post-nuclear war.
I thought it was Fury Road.
Well, that's the most recent one that came out,
okay.
and that's somewhat of a. I don't really want to call it a reboot, but it's kind of like you have Top Gun Maverick that just came out.
Gotcha.
It's kind of a nod back to.
Okay.
You better watch it because
Yeah.
that's like where we're headed within the next year. So
Mad Max.
Uh-huh.
That's what our world is coming to.
yes, gas is at a. You're not gonna be able to get gas. Electricity, of course, that's not gonna work. So
Everything's going to turn into a desert.
Yep.
Yeah, it's worth a.
Better start wearing.
It's worth an hour and a half of your
chaps,
time.
A lot of
Yeah,
leather,
a lot of leather
spikes,
chaps, yeah.
Shoulder pads with spikes.
and grow
I'm already
mullet.
set. I'm already set for that.
Chris says that RRR sounds like a pirate movie. You know what sounds like a pirate movie is Dave when he says cars.
Yeah,
Cars. You
I
say
can't say it now without
Right.
thinking about it.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to catch me later in the show
Yeah.
and see if I can
I'll
get
set
this
you up.
out.
I'll set you up.
Hey, so let me circle back to this heaven thing. Just we don't have to dig too much
Yes.
deeper into it, but there is we have all these questions about what the afterlife's going to be like, what heaven's going to be like, or the new heaven, new earth is going to be like, and the Bible is kind of frustratingly silent on it. It gives us just like pictures and images at best, but doesn't answer all these questions we have. It just invites us to trust God that He who created this world is going to bring it back to what it's supposed to be, and even better than its fallen current state. What is the best that the world has to offer now, and how do you remove the sin factor from it, the corruption factor, the frailty factor, the entropy factor, if you will, and within that go, what is the most amazing intimate moments you have with God now, and how does that go exponentially more when you are face to face, as Paul says, so to speak. There is a theological term for this, if you ever want to do your own reading, called and it's such a lame word, but whatever, the beatific vision. Meaning beatific means like beatitudes, maybe you heard of, which just means like blessed, because the beatitudes are blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown, and on Jesus goes. What is going to be the blessing? And some say it should even be translated like happiness or even joy. What is the blessing / happiness / joy that's going to happen when you have a vision of God, when you see God? And I don't mean like a dream vision, but like, oh, there He is. You know what I mean? And how that will so radically change. It'll radically change you to the core, that by seeing God, it actually like affects you like radiation affects you in some way. It literally changes your thinking, your perception, your being, your identity, your entity, your biology, if I could say that. And if you trust God, love God, and believe what the Bible says is true about God, pretty freaking amazing. Yeah. We're topping the hour here. Kent, you want to give a shout?
Yeah. You are listening to Questions You Never Thought You Could Ask in Church here, 21.6 The Net, of course, live every Wednesday at 12:30. And if you have questions, feel free to text them in at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to 815-314-0363. Again, 815-314-0363. Nothing is off limits, especially if you put emojis in there, from what I'm understanding at the beginning of this show now.
Which I'm seeing a few in the comments.
Well, yeah,
so-
we are getting a little emoji happy here. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Of course, you can always follow, subscribe to Fellowship of Faith, Facebook, YouTube, also with 21.6 Sunday mornings, 10 a.m., actually about 9:55. We go live as well for the worship hour, so you can tune in and join us there live or in person. It's just a great time again here on 21.6 The Net or out there on YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. So enjoy having you here, and continue to ask those questions that, well, you never thought you could ask in church.
We got one from Gene here, who's joining us online today. Thank you, Gene. Yeah. And he says, can speaking in tongues be imparted by someone who already has received this gift? And the short answer is maybe. It's not like an automatic kind of thing, but you do see this idea in the Bible that the Spirit can be shared from one person to another. And God is ultimately going to decide at the end of the day how or when a gift is imparted. but you do see a little bit of precedence for that kind of thing. So it's a good strong maybe there for you, Gene. Hopefully that helps. Shout out to Michelle here, who's joining us on the line as well, who just wants to let Steve know that she enjoys pina coladas. So that's good to know.
Me too.
All right.
And,
All
you
right.
know, Gene, I would say back to the speaking in tongues. I think Barbie speaks in tongues.
Yeah.
A lot of times I don't understand it. So I usually have to say, like, I think we need to get the interpreter. I'm not picking up on this.
So who interprets for you?
Well, no one. That's the point. I don't know what you're saying. Sorry, I can't understand you. I gotta go.
You know, does Maya interpret for you? Because our kids have started to interpret
Yeah,
for us.
yeah.
Like Ben O'Reilly will explain what Tina means.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay. You know, we have translators in the house.
So they understand Tina more than they do you.
Well, no, they speak both of our languages.
Mm.
Yeah, they've
Yeah.
you know, like any good translator would, and they're able to bridge the gap.
What's their natural language between you two? Is it Tina or is it Dave?
I don't know. I think they got their own kind of dialect, you know, going on.
You've got to find the middle ground dialect that both can understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I think about my parents. Probably true.
Yeah,
But I would
bilingual native.
But
you
I
know,
would probably say that I understand my dad much more.
yeah. Do you? Okay.
It's the four-wheeling.
It's the four-wheel, the circuses.
You have it in common.
It's because we're the exact same person.
100% Tina says.
See, she says it.
All right, Andrew. So I've got to do this. We've been putting this one off because it's long, but we got an email question, and I want to go for it. All right.
I'm glad you take charge of it because I don't even know where to begin. So.
All right, listeners, hang in there. This is a longer question that came in via email. Here we go. I didn't get far on my second read of 1 Corinthians chapter 15. I immediately was drawn to some facts that Paul was using in this letter to the Corinthians, and even the resurrection witnesses list omits women. Questions highlighted. I only tried to add. Oh, okay. I don't need to say that part. Okay, so within this list in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, where Paul says there's all these witnesses to the resurrection, I'm filling in some gaps here. He says that he appears to Cephas, and that's Peter by his Aramaic name. Cephas is how you'd say it. And then the 12 apostles, although there are only 11. So why does he say 12? Well, because others have filled the gap. He appears to 500. He appears to James. This is Jesus' half-brother. By the way, Steve Wells is all about James. Him and James. He's going to be hanging out with James in the new heaven, new earth.
So how does half-brother through Mary?
Yes. And again, so
sorry, tangent.
Let me tangentially go off, and I'm not going to go down the rabbit trail too much. Mark chapter 6 will talk about Jesus' brothers, and they'll talk about his sisters as well. And in a Protestant perspective, there is no problem whatsoever with Mary being a virgin at the time of Jesus' conception, but then later bearing children in a very natural, sexual kind of way. That's what I believe. I think it's the more natural reading of the text, and that's the typical Protestant position, that Jesus has half brothers and sisters, because Joseph not being Jesus' dad, they would be the descendants, so to speak, the progeny. Is that the word I'm looking for here, of Mary and Joseph?
Gotcha. That's what I was wondering, if those were Mary and Joseph's kids, and that's how they were doing the half because God the Father.
That's the assumption it's coming
there's
from.
Potentially a death and another husband or something.
Now, in fairness, we can venture some other things, because what happens to Joseph after they split for Egypt and post the 12-year-old back to Jerusalem episode? Who knows? It's unanswered, right? It's left to tradition at best. So could it be Mary getting remarried? Yes. I'll give you the Catholic interpretation of it, and it's that it's Joseph's children from a previous marriage, and that Joseph is a widower, and so that they are Jesus' stepbrothers, so to speak. For the purpose of this question, doesn't matter but that was the rabbit hole. And then he appears to all the apostles. Last, he appears to Paul. This list does not match appearances of the 4 canonical Gospels or Acts. Well, it actually does. It just adds more details. Paul doesn't mention Mary. You're right, he doesn't. But not mentioning someone doesn't mean that Jesus didn't appear to other people as well. He also leaves out the other women witnesses. Yes, he does. Why? I don't know. Gospels say nothing of the resurrected Jesus appearing to James or the crowd, or the 500. You're right. They don't. Paul's reference in 1 Corinthians being seen by James and Cephas apparently could not be verified to the Corinthians. No, I think you're taking some license here. And there's a number of questions that are now to follow, but let me pause for a moment because we're not completely lost, right?
I don't think
1
so.
Corinthians 15 is this truly amazing passage of the Bible talking about the centrality and importance of Jesus' resurrection, both historically, the fact that there are eyewitnesses to it, that you can trust it, so to speak, but also the theological reasons of why it's so important. And in it, there seems to be this early Christian creed or oral tradition that Paul recites to the Corinthians. Like this is kind of the story that's going around, so to speak. It does not mention everyone, just like every answer we give doesn't turn over every fact. Every conversation you have doesn't address every detail. And every eyewitness in court doesn't mention every single thing. That would be exhausting. It would be impossible, because how much do we just filter out naturally? We choose to highlight certain facts. This is what the gospel writers and Paul is doing. So there's nothing contradictory in here. You're just getting different eyewitness accounts. So
he's landing the plane.
You got it. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. He's landing the plane. So is Paul referring to historic rumor? Well, no, not rumor. He's referring to the historic account. The word rumor, I think, is a tricky word to use. I think it carries some bad connotation to it. But yes, he was circulating the oral account that was alive at the time, as this person is asking. Does Paul assume that Simon Peter would be counted as one of the 11 apostles? Yes, he does. And they're collectively referred to as the 12. Was Paul puffing up his own image and doctrinal teaching concerning how important the resurrection witnesses were? Puffing up his own image? Maybe. If you read it, he really is not puffing himself up in an arrogant way of putting himself first. In fact, in that same passage, he calls himself the least of the apostles. And he's very adamant about that in all of his writings. And yet he simultaneously, because of that, is always calling the churches to account, going, but I'm still an apostle, and so I still have authority. So in a way, kind of just suck it up, because I'm sent here by God.
Yeah.
And so
Love it.
It's not just Peter, it's me too. And I got something to say. And you know what? Peter even validates it. So we can go down that rabbit hole more. Paul claims James was a witness, but we know that there are at least 3 men named James involved in the life of Jesus. So which one exactly saw the resurrected Jesus? More likely than not, this is the same James who wrote the epistle or letter of James, who is the half-brother of Jesus. Why? Because he was the pillar of the church, and the other Jameses would be included in the 12. When and where did Cephas and James see Jesus? Well, they saw him a lot. They saw him in the upper room when they were gathered, when they were hiding out after the resurrection. They saw him when they were out on the Sea of Galilee fishing, and Jesus talks to him there. And it says that he met with them at other times. They saw him in Galilee when he met with them on the mountain there. He spent 40 days walking with these guys. It wasn't just a freak appearance. So saw him a lot of times. And the questions go on. Now look at Mark 16:8. We told you this was a long one, and we've been putting it off, but truly, thank you for the sincerity of the stream of thought of the question here, because there's a lot going on. This is your doppelganger, Steve. You know, I'm seeing your mind at work. Did you secretly write this question?
No, because I wouldn't. So I landed the plane right there.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
No, just the answer. No.
But look at Mark 16:8. Original ending here, no post-resurrection appearance in the original version. Yeah, you're right. Mark 16:7 tells women to go and tell the disciples. But the extra verses were added later, so maybe this was a reference to 1 Thessalonians. Well, it's just a reference to the historic reality of what happened that 1 Thessalonians picks up on. Bottom line, how does this discrepancy of those who recorded the post-resurrection appearance affect the validity of witnesses at the resurrection? It doesn't, because witnesses all give their account. No witness gives a comprehensive, exhaustive account. Not even audio recordings and video footage give an exhaustive, comprehensive account. It is still giving an account from an angle. And we all have a point of view, including the people who wrote the Bible, and they are telling the story, selecting the facts that were important to them, or the ones that they remembered, or the ones that just factored into their stream of consciousness as they were recording what they've witnessed.
Especially James.
Especially James, right?
James didn't even believe that Jesus was the Messiah.
Not until the resurrection.
Right. So why would you go to this length to to write about all this stuff if you didn't believe it. And
meaning James writing about it. Yeah, later.
And let's be honest, like we've all felt jealousy before, So here his brother, half brother, whatever you want to call him, is getting all the glory, and he's out talking to everybody else, and James is probably like, oh, poor me.
Can you always imagine being compared to your older brother Jesus,
and then having to suck it up and then write like what is true, and holy moly, he is the Messiah, and
like, do you think he was torqued at first?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
probably had to swallow his pride a little bit.
You know what's amazing about how the way James opens, though? James 1:1. Most modern translations will put it servant. Like if I was James and I was writing it, I would be doing like the thing right out of the gate. James, the brother of Jesus. Like bam, baby. You know, DNA shared here.
Who Jesus came to for wisdom and discernment. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
He asked me for advice once.
Yeah, exactly. I helped him with the girl issues, or whatever.
But... to the Son of God. Yeah.
Do you think James ever like beat Jesus in a fight? Like brothers fight? Yeah. I don't know. Jesus is the older brother.
It's like basketball.
Fine.
Basketball, maybe. Yeah. Mario Brothers.
Wouldn't have Jesus have done some Jedi mind tricks on him though?
You will.
I would have if I was Jesus. Yeah,
but see, no, because if James would have seen that or caught on to that, then he would have realized right then that he's got something. Maybe he is the Messiah, but he didn't find that out until the resurrection.
But so it's so amazing about the opening of James is he introduces himself not as Jesus' brother, but as a slave of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
just like it's mind blowing when you think about it.
Yeah. My brother.
And let me give a shout out to let me tell you about something, Brother, which airs every other Tuesday night, right? At 6:30 p.m.
Yeah, that's right.
Was that good?
That was pretty good.
That was a good segue.
That's pretty good.
I have not watched it.
So thank you, question asker, for this one. It was a longer one. We had to take you through as listeners. We've been putting it off because of the length, and so there's quite a journey in that. But
did that person give us a gender?
Maybe.
Okay, we got 4 people in here. What are the odds? What do you think? Male or female? Ken?
I think it's a male.
A male?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it sounds like something I might ask too.
Oh, so you wrote it? Okay.
No, I didn't write it, but
yeah, it's all eye language. It's all first person.
But it does sound like the bears that I would poke.
Okay, fine thoughts, but to actually go through with it, I'm saying it's a female.
Because they took the time to have the thoughts
and
they organize the thought and do something. Instead of tormenting themselves at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Me, I just keep it all in here. Great job.
Because you're like, I don't know that I actually want an answer.
Yeah.
We see Steve popping another nicotine pill, right?
Yeah. Gosh. Give me 4 milligrams.
How do I handle that? So we've got 2 here that are almost the same question with different subjects. So I'm going to combine them together.
Okay.
As Christians, should we, and then here's the 2 parts, should we refrain from watching movies or TV series that promote behaviors and lifestyles contrary to God-pleasing life? And then the other variation on is, should we refrain from shopping at stores or other businesses that teach stuff that isn't in line with God's word? So that, how do you deal with things, people, groups, organizations that differ from what you believe God's word teaches?
Yeah. And this could be in any other multiplicity of ways as well. I think every Christian needs to memorize Romans chapter 14. This is a great chapter that I think just cuts through all of these questions that come up again and again, and that we all wrestle with individually at times. From what companies is it okay to invest in, to where is it okay to shop, to what is it okay to watch, to what can I listen to what should I wear? Any kind of Christian and culture question can be kind of addressed out of Romans 14. Let me read some pertinent excerpts to you. It says this: "Except the one whose faith is weak, without quarreling over disputable matters. One person's faith allows them to eat anything, but another whose faith is weak eats only vegetables." Let me clarify the issue at play. In the ancient world, the way that you got most of your meat, if you lived in a city or in a market town, is that you went to the local temple, and the local temple sold the sacrificial meat that was brought in on the altar and kind of operated like a store, so to speak. So it was safe to assume that most meat that you would eat had been sacrificed to some kind of foreign god. Add to that another layer, that in a Christian perspective, many of the first Christians were Jews. And coming out of a Jewish background, there were the kosher laws that surrounded what kind of meat I could eat, and more specifically, how the meat had to be prepared, or what measures were taken that the meat would be, so to speak, honoring to God, or clean, if you will. And that I therefore wouldn't do something unclean, like, for example, not just eating pork, if you will, but eating meat with the blood still in it, or eating meat that was cooked in its mother's milk, or something to that nature. So there was these crises of conscience that people were having, and very relevant questions of, well, now that I'm free in Christ, like, can I eat this? Should I eat this? Shouldn't I eat this? If I was to eat this like demon meat or this sacrificial idol meat, am I kind of like practicing idolatry here? Am I inviting something evil into my life? And so on and so forth. This is what Paul is speaking to, but it applies to any number of these situations. The one who eats everything, he says, must not treat with contempt the one who does not, and the one who does not eat everything must not judge the one who does, for God has accepted him. Who are you to judge someone else's servant? Meaning, God's servant. To their own master, God, servants will stand or fall, and they will stand, for the Lord is able to make them stand. One person considers one day more sacred than another, another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Whoever regards one day as special does so to the Lord. Whoever eats meat does so to the Lord, for they give thanks to God. And whoever abstains does so to the Lord and gives thanks to God. For we don't live to ourselves alone. We don't die to ourselves alone. If we live to the Lord. We die to the Lord. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. For this very reason, Christ died and returned to life, so that he might be the Lord of both the living and the dead. A couple more verses. You then, why do you judge your brother or sister? Or why do you treat them with contempt? For we will all stand before God's judgment seat. So then, each of us will give an account of ourselves to God. Therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, and to the person asking for themselves, instead, make up your own mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or sister. Paul says, I am convinced, being fully persuaded in the Lord Jesus, that nothing is unclean in itself. But if anyone regards something as unclean, then for that person it is unclean, because it's not done basically out of faith. So you got to ask yourself the conscience question, is basically what it comes down to. Can I do this with the right motive and a clean conscience? And if you are, Paul would say your faith is strong. And as someone who is strong in their faith, you are free to exercise your faith in that way, as long as you are not destroying another person by what you're doing. Others will have a crisis of conscience in some of these matters and go, I can't do this. I shouldn't do this. It bothers my conscience. Then you shouldn't. Paul would say your faith is weak, and that's okay to say your faith is weak. All of our faith is weak in various ways. And so in honor to Christ, sacrifice this, don't partake of this, don't fill yourself with this, don't shop here, don't watch this, etc., 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 etc. I'm just giving Steve fodder here, and I'm going to regret doing this. Mm-hmm. But, being some of my background, I grew up heavily in the D&D era, the role-playing game era. Of course, in the 80s, every conservative Christian was saying, this is demonic, this is satanic, this is of the devil, and on and on. And I remember I hit a moment where I had this crisis of conscience, and God was really taking a hold of my life. And I just knew I had to kind of get rid of it all and throw it all away. And there was actually something like deliberate. I had to do that. Talked to a buddy at church, a guy named Kent, not Kent Jones here in studio, but another Kent. And he was saying the same thing, where, he had just like all the great classic rock albums on vinyl, like original. And like, he was just, he knew he had to get rid of them. And he honored God by doing it, even though today he looks back going, I would have no problem listening to this. And, what did I throw away? I mean, this is like first edition kind of stuff. I mean, it was a treasure trove to him today, is kind of, I have it, but it was the right move. Because where we were in our faith, it would have been a sin to continue. And God was calling for that sacrifice as a way of choosing him over something. Mm-hmm. But today, I have no problem like reading that stuff, looking at that stuff or whatever. It isn't causing me any kind of crises in my walk with God. So that, I think, it's a longer chapter, but it's a very clear. It's a James kind of chapter,
Yeah.
isn't it? You know, it's
Yeah.
clear.
To the point, yeah.
It's clear thinking. It's practical. Spend some time reading that whenever you have these questions coming up. That would be my advice.
Yeah, and I just had a conversation with someone earlier this week, kind of about that idea of you saying that at that time, partaking in whatever that thing was would have been sin for you or caused you to sin in that way, but now it won't necessarily.
No, I'm saying back in that time, it may or may not have caused you to sin because it realistically was meat sacrificed in pagan temples.
No, I was talking
gods.
in your situation with like
I'm
with
sorry.
like the D&D
I'm sorry.
and stuff and other things that people have said, oh, okay, I don't need this in my life. And I think that's an interesting concept that sometimes sin is personalized, if you will.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily this list of, is this thing a sin or not? It's like, well, is it for you?
Yeah. There are
that's
some
a
universal
concept I never
sins.
really thought of before.
Right. Yeah. Some universal sins, but some that are very particular. You got it. And Jesus will put it this way. If your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have two eyes and be thrown into the fires of hell. Now, that's pretty much verbatim.
Yeah.
What Jesus has to say. And it's that exact same thing. Some things are going to cause certain people to sin and not others. Right. Some people can see things, listen to things, watch things, and not be affected by it. And others, it has a deep effect. Alcohol maybe is a great example of this. Alcohol is a gift of God. There's nothing sinful about alcohol. But some people, it poses such a temptation, or it leads them to bad places, or they do things when they are under the influence of it that are just wrong. You got to cut it out, even though there's nothing wrong with it because of some propensity towards sin between your personality and this thing.
That's why I love to drink, because that way when I do drink and I do sin, I can blame it on the alcohol. It's not me.
Ah, it's fascinating.
So I live my life.
It's going to rewrite that whole Romans 7
probably
thing there,
98% of my life I'm drunk.
Including now, we right. Kind of suspect.
Oh yeah, I'm hammered.
Yeah, where do you think those bottles came?
Yep.
Yeah, right.
The old fireball. A lot of balls.
Yeah, but I think that is a question that comes up a lot, especially I'm thinking like right now with everything with like Pride, and June is Pride Month. Like, I think that's something that comes up a lot for people. Like, okay, now Kohl's has this, Pride line of clothing or whatever. You're like, okay, should I shop there? And at a certain point, you're going to run out of places to go. Like, if you're looking for something that's going to align 100% with what you believe, I don't know that it's out there. For every circumstance. Like,
and practically, I see what you're saying, but that's never the way that the Bible approaches it, because it never gives the approach of, well, there's no real practical way around this, so I guess I just have to kind of do something against conscience.
Yeah.
No, it does far the opposite. It'll actually call you to the John the Baptist way of life. And there are some people who embrace what I would call prophetic callings, if you will. And the prophetic calling can take on a very specific nature. So, for example, some people might see the way that family members are abusing themselves with food. For example, maybe they're not an alcohol addict, but maybe they're a sugar addict or a caffeine addict, or maybe they're just chronic overeaters or gluttons, to use a biblical term. And they adopt a different way of life and say, I'm going to cut it out. Not so much because there's anything wrong with it or they have a problem with it, but to show that there can be an alternate way and to live it almost as a foil to what the culture is saying is inevitable, or the culture is saying is inevitable, again, if you will. So
we've got 2 minutes left.
All right.
Well,
we got a quick one here, or we got words of wisdom from
I had a
the
thought.
paintballing circus guy
you're talking
over here.
about the meat market. Remember when you were talking about that?
Yeah.
So
we already know where you're going, Steve.
No,
I mean,
you're
dropping a phrase like that.
Where I'm going with this. Remember, I'm drunk. No, I'm kidding. For all those that are out there, I am not drunk. Okay, I'm drunk on the Holy Spirit. Anyway, last night, so we're in line at Menards, right?
Yeah.
And I can only imagine, like, if in those marketplaces that they had the beef stick and the cheese stick, like Slim Jims.
Yeah.
like, well, this one is from was made from the beef that was sacrificed to this
to
god.
Dagon or
Right,
something.
yeah.
You know, right?
Cheap, real cheap.
Yeah, yeah, I won't eat that.
Right.
How did they cook it?
Yeah.
How was it sacrificed?
Yeah. You know what? I won't even go there. We don't have time.
Can you give
Maybe
us
next
a
week.
teaser for next week?
Well, you mentioned coals and Pride Week and whatnot, and you know, it bothers me that the businesses themselves, it's like I don't even know that the businesses believe in any of it. It's just a marketing gimmick, which I guess, I don't have a problem with, because I mean, that's their whole business, is they have to advertise and they have to try and get people into their store. So it is what it is, whatever.
Yeah, but sometimes it gets painted
seems
as being
cheap.
such a virtuous idea,
Right.
when at the end of the day we're just following where popularity
Yeah.
and trends are going
Yeah.
to sell product.
Yeah, it's consumerism at its finest.
Well, we're out of time here today. If we didn't get to your question yet, it is still in the inbox, and we invite you to text them in 24/7, not just when we're live in studio. Again, the way you do that is text them to 815-314-0363. Again, that's 815-314-0363. Any question goes here. We'd like to help you on your spiritual journey. We'd like to help you kind of wrestle through the questions that you're asking. If you have missed past episodes and would like to catch some, you can join us on Spotify or Apple or Google or whatever your podcast provider happens to be. And just search for questions you never thought you could ask in church. We got a whole archive of past shows that we'd love for you to check out. You can join us at fellowshipoffaith.org and go to the FOF Plus page and find that and other podcasts as well. We go live in Studio 21.6 every Wednesday afternoon at 12:30 p.m. We will be around next Wednesday with more questions. In the meantime, keep asking, keep wondering, keep seeking. Jesus says, if you seek, you will find. And let's take him at his word on that. God loves you. He died for you, and you can have new life in him. Catch you next time.